welcome to all of you to this webinar, PPJ Roadmap 2022. So that's a great number, 2022. We have planned to present to you many details and insights regarding the development of the PPJ frameworks, the two versions, PPJ Framework for WinForm and the PPJ Web. And I think it is a great idea having Thomas from IC Group here in this call, because he can surely better present to you all the details we are facing to in the next years. Thomas, could you introduce yourself to all the ones who do not know you yet?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Thomas Althammer. I've been with IC Group ever since the very beginning. I'm one of the founding members of IC Group, and I've worked on some of the projects that are with us today, because I used to be in charge in terms of PPJ of all the reporting conversion stuff. I've developed all the tools to help migrate them from Gupta to .NET or to various reporting engines. And recently, in the last few years, I've been dealing with sales and marketing at IC Group. So that's my role also for today. I look forward to go with you and Günther through the slides that we've prepared.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thomas. And I guess all of you know me. So still, I want to introduce myself. My name is Günther Hofmann. As you know, I'm the managing director of fecher GmbH, as well as fecher LLC in Washington, D.C. And besides my duties as a managing director, I'm also head of sales for all the modernization projects. And we have prepared, as said, many details of the PPJ framework roadmap, and we will get those details directly from Thomas. He will present the development of the framework for WinForm and Web. And we also wanted to use this chance to give you more insights in what it really means, the PPJ Web. What can this do for you also when you are still on a WinForm environment? Therefore, we want to give you some ideas regarding WiseJ, how it can be used in a web environment, which is the originally designed for, but also how you can use it for a desktop platform. And when you are interested in that, then surely you are interested also in how you can move your application from WinForm to web, and that is what we call web enabling. I will spend a few minutes on the process of this moving forward to web. And since this is used in the last years by many companies and for huge projects, we wanted to give you some insights in projects in production, in some very fantastic projects with great user interface redesigns based on WiseJ. And finally, we will wrap up everything with the PPJ maintenance benefits. So let's start with, I think, the most important part for today. Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Günther. It's Christmas time, and very shortly now before Christmas, we actually have pushed out a lot of releases and have completed a very, very busy year for us. For the one part, we have a beta version, the first beta version, more or less ready for you on PPJ Framework 2022, which is the big major version for next year. This is now being made available. We will have the final release in the second quarter of next year planned. So we have some beta period to consider before we actually release it as a stable build for you. What does it mean, and where are we with this? We have had this split between PPJ Framework and PPJ Web for a few years. Originally, PPJ Web was based on a different technology, we moved over to our own technology called WiseJ, which you may have heard before. And still, WiseJ is a pretty young technology. So it's been around for, I think, 5 years now. But we have now so many products and projects in production that it can be considered not only stable, it's also a great platform to actually evolve applications. So PPJ Web is maybe not the appropriate name. For us, WiseJ as a base technology is actually another step to make projects and applications evolve even further. On the detailed level, we have here 2 streams of code that we have to consider. PPJ Framework is and will be based on Windows Forms, which is the platform that you probably all decided to go to at one point in your history, bringing Gupta to the .NET platform. And then obviously the most common technology for that is Windows Forms, even still today. I mean, we have WPF, we have MAUI and some other UWP, some other concepts. Sometimes it's quite difficult for me to keep up with all the names that Microsoft is putting out. And every other year, you get a new strategy being pushed. Now, I think we are all on the Blazor hype with all the pros and cons that has. But when we look at these technologies, we actually have to see that most of them, at least in the initial phase, are not really a suitable target for the type of application that we support. Many of your projects are coming from an area where we actually have very huge applications with hundreds of forms, sometimes even thousands of forms. For example, in ERP, in CRM, all kinds of financial applications. We have migrated, I think, even more than 5,000 applications in all industries, in all countries worldwide throughout the last 15 years. And most of these applications are really big. With big, I mean at least a few hundred forms, dialogues to consider. And when I look at the other technologies that are being pushed and suggested to work on, they often come with a little hello world, or maybe some samples showing a few things, a few features. But going for the big shot and supporting, all the years of development that you've put into these applications is often not covered. And to us, this level of stability so far has only been reached by the Windows Forms library as part of .NET, which is actually client server. And finding something suitable that can be used for web enabling to also target the browser is something that we couldn't find, and we did some extensive tests also together with Günther and a consultant on Blazor, for example, and we failed with very simple approaches that don't seem to be production ready, at least not for the type of application that we know from our customers. So coming back to our strategy, we will continue to have both streams, PPJ Framework on the one hand side, which will be a long-term stable support. At the moment, there is no plans to support .NET Core and .NET 6, mostly because Windows Forms for .NET Core has been not really that stable. We had hoped for .NET 5 to be a suitable target, but Microsoft originally planned to drop Windows Forms. That was announced 2-3 years ago in favor of some other technologies. Now they added it back again. But from everything that we've seen and that we've tested and worked with, and we are very close also with Microsoft engineers on the Windows Forms library, it's still not at the stage that we can consider it as a suitable, stable platform to make applications evolve to that. So we will stay with PPJ Framework 2022 on .NET Framework 4.8. That's, I think, an important message for you. 64-bit, obviously, long-term support, but that will be more or less where it is as a long-term perspective. PPJ Web, on the other hand, has really been improved, especially also this year. We cannot only target web, meaning the browser. We can actually take PPJ Web applications and deploy them as desktop applications, which is quite interesting because I know from a number of clients that they say, well, I mean, you have to go to the web, but we have some customers or we have some scenarios where we also need a desktop client. And that's something that we can actually enable with PPJ Web based on WiseJ. And we also have a very interesting strategy for supporting mobile applications. So you can actually, with very little effort, take your existing code, business logic, and turn some of those parts into a mobile application that even interacts with native features on mobile devices. And with PPJ Web 2022, we will not only support .NET 4.8, but also .NET Core and .NET 6. We need for that WiseJ 3, which has been in private beta for a few weeks, and it will be made available as a public beta at the end of this week. So it's really right around the corner. We have WiseJ, so the base technology for this running on Linux for almost a year now, the core parts. So it's, from our perspective, reliable and stable technology. I mean, it will be a beta phase, but the core message is we can actually take your applications and make them not just evolve with .NET to .NET Core, meaning .NET 6. We can even run them on Linux. We can run them on a Mac. We can support desktop and mobile. And I think that's quite an interesting story to look at because all of this works without really touching the core of the application, without a rewrite. You can actually basically migrate your application over. So if you look at the details a bit more, Günther, I think you can double click almost. So I think we talked about that already. If you look at the PPJ Web approach a little bit more, to me, a crucial part is the flexibility and also the outlook for the future in terms of where do you want to position your application. I think that the Corona or COVID-19 pandemic has shown that this drive to leave the office to make applications work anywhere couldn't be bigger today. And a lot of things changed throughout the last 24 months. If you look at things like Microsoft Teams here that we're using today for this webinar, or if you're looking at simple applications like Word and Excel, they are now available cross-platform in the browser, on the desktop, on the mobile device. And I think that this is something that is somehow expected, that will be more and more expected by customers to be actually flexible and to come close to the device that the user wants to use today or that he needs to use. And this said, we are used to having VPN access, shielding our networks. But the new platforms, the new technology, the cloud-oriented deployments, they actually look at different security mechanisms like zero trust concepts. And all of that is something that we can actually employ and integrate with PPJ Web so that you can tell your customers a story of evolvement and make your applications actually grow together with this trend. And this is something that we want to address with PPJ Web. So even if you say, well, I am on desktop and most of my users are today, I think that we have a very interesting story to tell in terms of addressing also desktop needs with PPJ Web. And this is one thing that we wanted to share with you today. It's been part of PPJ Web and WiseJ for some time. We didn't really advertise it so much, but we have had a number of requests lately on this. And together with the mobile options, I think it's worth really to look into it. Good done.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Thomas. And since this should not only be theory here, what we hear from Thomas already, although we believe you, certainly, I thought it is interesting to see this running. And when I take a look at this list of attendees here, only one is using already the PPJ Web. And I hear from many of our customers and prospects that they are very interested in letting the application running as a web application, deploying it as software as a service on the cloud or on premise machines. But some of them still say, I have too many clients who are hesitant to use a cloud environment, who want to stick with the desktop application. And when we take a look at a real application, and that is our own software that we have migrated years ago from Gupta to WinForm, and then already a few years ago now from WinForm to Web using the PPJ Web, then you can see a typical application that is still looking or behaving like a desktop application, but is fully working as a HTML5 web application. So that asset was formerly a desktop application. It's now to most of the customers deployed as a browser application for a desktop browser, optimized for a desktop browser. Some parts are usable on mobile devices as well. And it supports everything we had before in our desktop application. You have model dialogues. You can load hundreds or thousands of rows very, very fast in such an application. You don't have to be afraid about performance. Very often we will see a better performance in such web applications than in the desktop application, because everything is done on the server. And when we think about the user interface, certainly our web enabling from WinForm to Web would just display your desktop look and feel in HTML5. And that's not, I guess, what you are aiming for when you think about a web application. Then you have to spend time on redesigning the forms, creating a theme that takes care of, for example, this kind of animation and colors. And that is really worth the money when you take a look at applications that are running in a browser but are not redesigned. And then it's a totally different story, especially when you sell such applications to your customers. But let me come back to the main story here. This is a browser application, as you can see. It's deployed on Microsoft Azure, and I'm using here Edge as a browser. But what are you doing when you don't want to deploy it as a web application? You don't want to deploy it on a cloud environment, or when you need a process on your desktop. As you could see, I clicked an icon on my desktop, and this is not now a application that is just wrapping the browser in a window like you can do it with the current browsers. As you can see, this application now connects to a local and embedded web server here, and the browser that is used for displaying this user interface is, in this case, Edge. That can be configured. You can configure Chrome, Edge, or what else you need or want to use. But the interesting thing is that this is working now exactly as the application you have seen before in the desktop browser, because this is the same code. These are the same binaries. We have simply deployed them on this machine and wrapped them in this container. And you can do everything what you have or can do with your browser application. So that is, you can imagine it that way, WiseJ as a user interface technology for a desktop application. And the interesting thing is, sometimes we have customers who say, we cannot migrate to web because my client server application is connecting to Outlook, to Word, is using other interfaces that needs a client environment. So what you can see here is the process on your client machine. I do not recommend this, but technically wise, you could now call directly Outlook from here. by ActiveX, you could work with your local registry. You could simply open a file from your local directory, like you would do it with the same code from your desktop application. So what I want to say with that is, when you want to move on with .NET 5.6 for whatever reason, or when you want to have a much better looking user interface, and you can create a more modern look and feel better with HTML5 than with WinForm, then this could be an option for you. This could be an option to web enable it to WiseJ, to do everything, to deploy it perhaps only as a desktop application because of some limitations you have to keep. And you just replace your interface technology by WiseJ and replace WinForm with it. So that is possible, and it behaves here, as said, as a local client. This application connects now to the database by TCP/IP, like your current desktop application would do it. So that's just something we wanted to share with you because it has been often overlooked by our customers who are already using WiseJ and PPJ Web. This is a fantastic scenario. And also for those of you who are still working with the PPJ framework and don't think about web, but think about modernization, the modernization of the user interface, perhaps WiseJ is a good alternative for you, throwing away WinForms and replacing it with WiseJ. Is there a question before I go on? So it's a webinar, but we can also start discussions about this. Obviously not. Then let me go on, because now perhaps you have the question, yeah, how can this work? Most of you are on the PPJ framework, have hundred thousands of lines of code in C#. Perhaps you have further developed your application with new code for new windows. Perhaps you have used other third-party controls to achieve this or that on your user interface. And the question is now, how can this work? Is this a rewrite? Is this similar to the porting project that we did for you, where we migrated source code to a new source code from SAL to C#? Or what does it mean when we say web enabling? And in essence, this means we simply remove WinForm and replace it by something else. That is WiseJ. And why is this working? You are technical enough to understand what I present here. When you take a look at the WinForm code and at a small sample, a form and two controls, you know that in Visual Studio, the user interface is described in initialize component. You can read it. And when you would do the same in WiseJ, creating this form two controls, it's also described in initialize component. And now compare. It's almost the same. On the left side, you can see system Windows Forms. On the right side, you see WiseJ Web. There are some small differences, like use visual style back color, but that is because in WiseJ you have a much more powerful concept for your user interface with a theming engine that helps you creating modern looking UIs. And when you take a look at the events, then you can see in WinForm this and in Web that. So it's exactly the same. We don't have to change. We don't have to change the code. We just replace references, and we have to do a few more things to get it really running. When you would like to get it running only as a desktop deployed application based on WiseJ, many of the web enabling tasks and refactoring tasks you don't have to do. You don't have to refactor your ActiveX, you don't have to refactor your registry access and other things when you only want to replace the interface by WiseJ. So that's why it's working. And when you think about your development process, you would simply continue. You would work with Visual Studio. You would have a designer. This designer is even better than what you use currently in WinForms. It's a WYSIWYG designer. You can put any control from the toolbox to it and develop like WinForm developer. And only when you start the application, the web server kicks in and it gets deployed in your browser. That's it. You don't have to work directly with HTML5, JavaScript, CSS, and all those concepts. Certainly, it would be good sooner or later that you have some in your development team who understand this. You have to better understand how to deploy such an application on a web server. That's a specific know-how you need. But for the development, application development, developing your business logic, you can simply continue like a WinForm developer. And when you think about the design, you don't have to implement it. So last year we completed a project that we migrated from VB6 to WinForm. And this customer said they want to have also a user interface redesign. So we redesigned all the forms, hundreds of forms, and we tried to apply different styles on the forms. And I don't know if you have ever tried this in WinForm without using a third-party layer like DevExpress in Infragistics or so. That's almost impossible. It's a real hard work to get this done, and it's not a definition of the user interface, it's an implementation. With WiseJ, you would do everything in editor. You would say, you would define how your toolbar should look like, and your other controls should look like. You would define those themes. You can even design the theme at runtime on your application that is running in your browser. And that's a very productive system that you can use, giving your application a totally new look and feel. Certainly, when you want to switch from a menu bar to an accordion design navigation bar, then this is implementation work. But when you think about this work, it has to be done once for your entire solution, and then you have to wire all the forms again. But the rest is done by a theming engine, and we will show you later some samples that have used this concept. Thomas, I think you can tell us a bit more about integrating third-party controls.
Yeah, sure. Maybe one thing up front, every now and then there's a little audio noise, at least here on my end. So I would be great if those that have the microphone open could just mute themselves. I think it's better for the audio quality for everyone. Cool. Well, the theming is really a fantastic part. What I also see, no criticism, Günther, is it's always like the hello world thing where we show how it works in a certain small example. I think I was the most impressed by the theming by one of our customers in Italy. It's a subsidiary of the German Dativ company. And they have really, they ship their application for electronic invoicing with different themes that the user can choose from. I think they implemented 4 different themes. And it's really fascinating to see what can be done also by making your applications not only look modern and nice, but let the user choose different colors as we are used to, for example, in Office or Visual Studio with the light and the dark interface. So if you're interested in learning more about theming, please let us know, either Günther or myself, and we are also happy to share some screens and impressions from the Dativ case, which is, to me, a very impressive one. Another thing that we've really made sure that it works great in WiseJ is being open. You probably know our roots. At one point, we all the founding members of IC Group were developers like you. We all did huge business applications For example, in my former history, I was doing huge healthcare applications, and I always had the need to be productive, like being able to develop efficiently on the one hand side, and at the same on the other hand, I wanted to be flexible. Whenever I had a request coming in, hey Thomas, we need this or that feature, I wanted to have a development system that allows me to do different things to evolve, and I don't want to be locked in. That's a key concept that we thought about when we designed WildShay. And there is the secret, I don't know if you've heard about it, that we actually threw away 3 versions of WildShay before the 4th one that we now have today in its 3rd edition, its 3rd release, actually came to life. So we weren't really happy with what we tried to achieve and got away with it. Being flexible is one key aspect. What does that mean? I mean, you probably know ActiveX controls. You also know .NET UI controls. Günther mentioned DevExpress or Syncfusion, to name just 2 big companies offering such controls. And with WildShay, we wanted to have an environment where you can actually use any JavaScript control. I mean, ActiveX doesn't work in the browser. Well, you could still try, but it's not a good idea. Also, .NET UI components don't work there. But JavaScript has there's a tremendous world of JavaScript components out there. And when we do migration projects, or when we also do new developments, we usually look around, try to identify good working controls. To give you one example, at the moment we are working with a company in the energy sector, and they are building machines and software to support the big energy producers that power our energy networks in Europe. And they had a request to actually be able to draw like electronic circuits in a way, or like different devices connected to each other. And to do that, or to develop such a component from hand, would be, I mean, a lot of work, really. We looked around and found a library called Go.js, and it's a very powerful, fantastic JavaScript library. It looks a little bit like Visio, if you've seen that, which allows you to do flow charting. But now we can actually, on the component side, add our own components and give that as an interactive user interface to the customer. So we actually used this component, a ready-made component. We integrated it into WildShay, which took just a couple of days, and now it's a WildShay component. So it works just like any other control. You drag it from the toolbox, put it on your form, and then you can add your code. And I think this is one of the really fascinating parts. Here we have also listed some other controls that many of the WildShay customers are using. DevExpress, for example, you see in the middle a pivot grid and a pivot chart showing drill down features for financial data. On the right, we have, for example, text control, which is like a word processing type of component that some WildShay applications use. Stimulsoft is a reporting environment. So to name just a few, but the options are endless. There's really a lot that you can do. Good job.
Yeah, thank you, but there is much more you can tell us.
I know.
About.
Yes. And I mentioned Dativ before, which is one of the case studies that we did earlier this year. And Dativ is converting their entire application stack to WildShay. They started off with an application for electronic invoicing, which they did from scratch. But Dativ has a huge existing application with, I think, 1,600 something forms on Windows desktop, like with Windows Forms, and they are redoing that with WildShay. And one result is what you see here. It's actually a UI specifically to be designed to be responsive right from the beginning. Responsiveness means that the screen adapts automatically to the window of your application adapts automatically to the screen size of the application. So, for example, if you have a smartphone and you put it up, it's like in the vertical mode. Then you see here that the first panel, the first box with these 4 colored options that you see there is on the top. So the other boxes are below that. On the horizontal mode desktop in the back, you can actually see several of those boxes. Some frameworks allow you to do that automatically without really thinking about it. If you try out Bootstrap or some of the other UI components, they have this built in. The problem with that is, at least from my experience, it works for the nice, simple stuff, but then it gets complicated and you have a CRM application that has 30 columns to show in a grid. Which ones do you take away? So it comes at a cost. Simplicity means that responsiveness may work, but you cannot make a very complex application, a complex ERP or CRM application, be just simple. And that's a typical crossing point that we often find when people evaluate technology and compare it with WebCast, that at some point you will have to look at this yourself with some manual effort. In terms of responsiveness, WebCast allows you to have one form with different profiles. So you can easily have one complex form that's actually shown with different variations on different devices. And you can also adjust this form to be responsive itself or to react to a responsive change event. For example, someone turns the phone around, you get an event, and then you can actually switch one or the other profile on or off. For example, hiding and showing columns. But you have to think about it. And here Dativ is a nice example of doing that. So responsiveness is a key aspect. It's a key feature inside WebCast with a lot of options, even for very complicated cases. To bring this one step further, you see a little mobile device. And WebCast does allow you to do mobile development. Now, we call this connected apps. That means we focus on keeping the application, like your business logic, running on the server side outside the mobile device. And the mobile device could be either a browser on this device. You can do that today. That's nothing new. But we also have mobile app packages so that you can actually have your own app deployed to Android or iOS. And in that case, it's actually using an embedded web view that will connect to your application on the server. And it appears as a native application, which is not that fancy on the first sight. But the interesting part is that you can actually interact with local device hardware. For example, if you want to make the phone vibrate, or if you want to turn the flashlight on the mobile device on or off, you can do that with one line of C# code. And it will actually do that locally on your device. This is an interesting aspect. If you need something with offline functionality, if you want to develop the next big cute email writing app, WebCast is probably not the right solution for you. But if you need to expose certain parts of your application to mobile workers, then WebCast is probably one of the most efficient ways of doing that, because you can also reuse the existing code. And we not just only give you these app packages with the local hardware integration. You can do all that with C# or VB.NET. We even offer deployment services. So if you don't want to mess with the app stores of Google and Apple at all, we have a services division that also manages those apps for you, so that you don't even need a Mac to build the app and deploy it. You can actually use our services for that. But that's just one step further. To take the mobile option, maybe, Günther, you can just also show the other image. There was another one on the slide, I think. Here you see actually the WebCast application running in full screen mode, and it really interacts with the local device hardware, but you design it, you develop it in Visual Studio just as a normal WebCast application. And this works for your existing PPJ-based application as well, once they're on PPJ Web. And remember the big screen, the one with the 200 data fields and the tabs and the grid with 50 columns? It won't look good on a mobile device, and we cannot make that work good on a local device. You will have to think about ways to redesign it and to make the screen light, depending on what your users have to do. But that's probably one part that can be solved, and we take away the difficult steps of bringing it to just yet another new technology, in this case, iOS and Android.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thomas. And we have already seen now several real applications, but also we saw some small samples. And therefore, we thought to give you more ideas how your application could look like and what other customers did, we show you some representative projects. And not only small projects. These are really huge ERPs, like this one, 2.8 million cell items, also a Gupta application, 200 report templates, 1,500 forms. And this application was already looking quite nice in Gupta. So you don't see it that way very often in Gupta. But yeah, the idea was, and the target was, to migrate it to C# and to Web and get also a more modern look and feel. And this application looks now that way. So that's a consistent style through the entire 2.8 million cell items and 1,500 forms. They used nice colors. They kept all the forms more or less as they were before. So they did not, for example, use this integration of buttons in the tool section of another control, which is a quite modern concept, also when you later want to make it more responsive. But it was really a fantastic project from Finland. The solution is rolled out in Scandinavia, and I think also in entire Europe. Another sample. Thomas, do you remember this?
Oh, yes, I do. It was actually, I think, one of the most fascinating migrations that we did. Also, when you show the old screen and the new one, it's actually this. It's not Gupta. This is Visual Basic 6, and it has a nice battleship gray form style on the right-hand side, and you have this green sidebar. And this was one out of how many? I think 21 applications and a large number of modules. So 1,500 forms, a huge number of active reports, and they wanted to go from Visual Basic 6 to C# and integrate all applications and then go to the web. And now, if you look at the web application, it's at the very same screen. It was the turnkey solution, so they gave us VB6, a big project setup, and they got back one integrated suite with all the stuff done with a nice redesign. There's actually even a more colored version of the sidebar, which we don't have here. But you may want to check out our websites, and you can see the screenshots on fecher.com or fecher.eu or at weischte.com. We have those screens featured. And it's one example of how you can turn actually a legacy, and I think it's okay to say a really old-looking application running on an old technology, and turn it into a full web-based application. Another point is, where do you actually have web applications made out of 1,500 screens? Most web applications that I know just cover a small aspect, or they are used for web shops or for shopping sites. But I think that this really also stands out. Maybe one example could be Zoho, for example, or some of the big ERP systems. But if you look at the mid-sized companies offering and selling solutions, for them it's quite a step up to actually deploy such an application as a web application. In this case, it's fully integrated into one unified suite.
Yeah, and the first idea of this customer was to migrate it to WinForm. And the reason why not using WebCast directly was, he said, this is used in very small cities throughout the country, in Canada and in North America, and they don't have the bandwidth for internet, and they want to run it locally. And as we told them, they can deploy it also as a desktop application. Then it switched the target from WinForm to web, and it would have been not possible to develop it in such a modern looking, with such a modern looking user interface. I also like the following project. It's a service management solution from Norway, also 400,000 lines of code, VB6 code that we migrated to WinForm and then directly pushed it forward to web. 20 applications, less forms here, 150 forms, but it looks so great. Not this one, that's the old. a legacy application in VB6, but you can see it's very dense user interface, a lot of controls on the forms, and they created this style. So again, here we can see that they kept more or less the forms, the content of the forms, because they didn't want to distract their users and didn't want to give them a training for a new solution. They wanted to keep the more or less the flow of the application and enhanced it by this nice looking accordion design on the left side and many other concepts of typical web applications. And as said, it has been migrated to WinForm automatically. The first solution was then looking like a desktop application, more or less identically to what you see in the back here, and then automatically moved forward with our web enabling tools to WiseJ, and then manually redesigned, getting this result. Another sample, also from Scandinavia, as I know.
Yeah, this is Skanska. Skanska has been porting to PPJ Framework for, I don't know, I think 10 years ago. It's been 2010, 2011. And here on the left, you see an application that's being deployed to 4,000 users. Skanska actually wanted to rewrite that application because they said, well, it's been with us. I mean, it's working well. We have deployed it on I think 1,000 machines. Some of them in Citrix, some of them as local desktop client-server applications. It's an in-house application, and they wanted to start over from scratch and looked at different options to rewrite this application. You have to know that Skanska is, I think, one of the largest construction companies in the world. They have something like 50, 60,000 employees around the globe, and they have in the database. I think some 30, 40, 50,000 construction projects. And this application with more than 800 forms is being used to calculate, control, sell, optimize, project plan all these projects. So imagine if Skanska is building a skyscraper in Oslo, Norway, and when you rewrite this application, you get the decimal position wrong. And the number of concrete lorry wagons is wrong. It would have had a big effect. So for them, the timing and the risk were two big decisions on how to bring this to the web. They wanted to do web. They looked at the rewrite, and then they asked us, well, we know that you have PPJ Web. Can we also look at it? And this project was done within the core project duration was just 6 months to take this application, bring it to the browser. We changed the look and feel a little bit. They wanted to have a small uplift and improve the look and feel. The task was to keep the performance consistent, and which we did. We actually improved it. And what they also said was that they wanted to ease deployment and cut on Citrix cost. Before, they told us at the end of the project, it took them 1 month, a full month, to bring out a new release of their software. Because until this application was deployed to all the servers, to Citrix, to all the local desktops, it took them 1 month to do that. Now with the WiseJ, with the PPJ Web-based version, they can do the full deployment within 1 day. And we never really got the exact numbers, but we estimated that the time and cost optimization in this case was by a factor of 20 or more. They're very happy about it. It's running very well. The users liked it right from the beginning. I think it's a great example of what you can achieve. And it was very worth staying with the existing code, but still having the modern environment. That was really the key message that they come back with and said the rewrite in the first place wasn't, the best solution. Actually, this way was for them at least the best option they could take.
Yeah, thank you very much for those details. The other system and project is quite similar. It's a huge order management system used in the big warehouses in the United Kingdom. It's a wind farm project, 400 single projects, 700 forms, almost 1 million lines of code. And it was looking as a wind farm application this way. And we see a trend in the United Kingdom, also forced by the government, that software developers have to have a web application, a web environment for their solutions. And that was, besides others, the reason to move on, to move forward this application from WinForm to web. It's not completed yet. We are currently working on it. And the new style looks like this screen. You can discuss the colors here. It's not my style, but it looks quite clean and is using all the responsive stuff that WiseJ offers to get this running on desktop browsers and tablet browsers. So that's a nice project started by a WinForm environment, and now we have another good sample from a customer who is already attending this meeting. Amit, I guess you can see the numbers here and recognize some of the screens. Thomas, can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, we should have actually given Amit the word because he knows all the details, and I hope we got all the figures and facts right. Amtech is actually an ERP solution used worldwide, as I think you're the market leader, Amit, for the packaging industry, which we all can understand has seen tremendous growth rates now with everybody staying at home and warehousing and shipping and logistics picking up worldwide. It was a huge project originally in Gupta, which was brought to the web. Maybe Günther, you can show us a little bit about it. It's powering, it's powering everything that is used at such a planned production site to produce boxes. So they have forklifts driving around with devices that run this application. They also do HR. All types of departments within such companies are covered by the Amtech solution. And here you can actually see the application running in the browser. We spent some time on this application working together. There were also some areas that didn't work right from the beginning that we saw we have to we cannot simply move over the code, as Günther showed you in the beginning, where we actually changed dependencies in the source files, where we actually had to take a different approach. And they had very complex screens with dependencies of different parts of the green screen to each other, firing events, reacting to the events, and it was kind of slow in the old version, and it got even much slower in the new version. But in that area, for example, we found also solutions by redeveloping that is in a clean approach so that it works well in the web. Because at the end of the day, although the step seems so simple from the old world to the new world, from desktop to browser, we have to remember that it's a totally different technology stack that we're working with. And although we are making the step very, very simple and easy to take, there may always be parts that need a bit more attention. And I remember this screen, I forgot the name, Amit will probably know it and recognize it, where you have all these splitter windows. It took us some time to brush that up, but I think we found a good solution. So today, I think it's a totally new system, having all the features inside. It's being deployed to a number of sites throughout the world. I don't know how many have switched over to this new system, but I heard from our colleagues that this is progressing. And we are also talking to Amtech about now evolving this application, because one thing is that the maintenance, the continuous work that you do on such an application continues. But at the same time, with the mobile option and with some of the other stuff that we have in WiseJ, with all the extensions that are available, you can also evolve the application even more. And we've heard from several customers that the switch to PPJ Web or the switch to WiseJ actually increased not just the productivity, but it opened a world to recognize or achieve things that weren't possible before. And I think that's part of the story. And I need to look forward to working with you on that, because we've talked about a number of scenarios, and look forward for next year to see what we can do from that.
And this is really also a great sample of a project that where we have to cope with several challenges. So, for example, I remember clearly a meeting at Amtech's offices where we talked about the look and feel of the user interface, but also the functionality. And I'm sure you have developed in Gupta, you double click on a row and open a detail form showing all the details of it. And the first question was, what happens on my tablet when I double click? It resizes it. So we need something, a different solution for that. And then we came up with this idea to put those additional small tools as embedded tools in each of those tables, where you can open the context menu or the double click and those things. And all those concepts are fully supported by WiseJ, and and helped us to develop this application. So I hope we could give you some ideas how applications could look like, and we wanted also to reduce concerns you might have perhaps to going forward, because your user interface is too complex, is using this or that you think it cannot be done in a web environment. But talk to us. I think we can solve much more things, and things I never imagined before are meanwhile running in a browser and in a web environment. So we are coming to the end of the webinar, and Thomas, can you wrap up everything again? What are the main benefits of the PPJ maintenance?
Yeah, well, I hope that we were able to show you the path that we are following, and the strategy that we also have around the PPJ family, the PPJ world, so to say. I remember, I think it was more or less 3 years ago, where we celebrated our 20th anniversary of IC Group, and Günther, we have been working together for almost the time as well. So it's really a long relationship, and we definitely have a lot of plans for the future. So PPJ is not, or the migration that we did from Gupta to .NET is not a dead end. That's my key message. It's actually, it opens a world of new possibilities, and we are also growing the company. We are growing our activities. I know that fecher has been growing the team, and we are seeing new requests. UI redesign is a new service that we offer because a lot of clients ask for it, and we have the resources within our organization to actually help with UI optimizations. And another thing is that we keep adding features and functions, and that we actually see the current and the future demands of end users as the driving force on how we want to evolve this platform and the PPJ world. So for us, at the moment, I think that the strategy is the best that we can take, and the best that we can fulfill and make available to you. You have the PPJ maintenance. We commit to long-term support. We will support future .NET Framework releases for the PPJ WinForms world. And at the same time, we see an even brighter future and an interesting step up for you in the PPJ Web scenario. The PPJ maintenance makes available the switch for you. It includes WiseJ, so you can actually use licensing options. You can also actually use a simple step up from your existing PPJ WinForms application to a PPJ Web application. It is a small conversion. We mentioned a few areas that you have to look at, or that may also need some finishing touches, but compared to a rewrite or implementing things new from scratch, I think it doesn't compare. And I think with this approach, we can actually open a full new world for you, including mobile development, or even embedded. I just talked to my colleagues in the lab, and they showed me an embedded version of WiseJ, where we actually have WiseJ not running just on Linux, but also embedded devices with even less features and functionalities integrated. So as you see, we are really adding more stuff and have very interesting plans for the future. So we're here for you, to support you. We're here to stay. We're here to evolve that, all of that. And if there's a if you're interested in exploring this further for your applications and to look into the options that we can provide, then yeah, feel free to get in touch with Günther or myself, because we would be happy to also take the next step with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thomas. And also thank you very much to all of you. We are at the end of this presentation today. You will get a link to download it next days if you want to review some of the parts, but please contact me when you want to talk about this or that, what you have heard today. I wish you a pleasant time the next days, the next weeks. Merry Christmas and a good start into the new year. So have a good time and stay healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.